Hi everyone, it's Miki from Psycho Miki, and we are going to talk about milk inside a bag of milk.
Milk inside a bag of milk.
Well, on today's video, I want to talk about two beautiful indie games. The first one is Milk Inside a Bag of Milk, and the sequel that it's called Milk Outside a Bag of Milk. This game offers us an unique experience and a super graphic picture about how is living with psychosis. So, so get ready for this journey into the fractured mind of our protagonist. For those unfamiliar, Milk Inside a Bag of Milk is a visual novel developed by Nikita Kryukov. I think he's a genius, just this is personal opinion. He made the music, he developed the whole game, and I think it's really immersive, so good job, Nikita. It places us in the shoes of unnamed young woman attempting to complete a simple task, buying a bag of milk for her mother. However, this mundane chore spirals into an odyssey filled with anxious, repetitive thoughts and disturbed perceptions. Since the beginning, we can notice that our protagonist has something strange. The perception of the reality it's not what we're used to. Which symptoms we can think that makes us believe that she has a psychosis? According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder, 5th edition, DSM 5, psychosis is a mental state where a person loses touch with reality. Symptoms include hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thinking and speech, abnormal motor behavior, and negative like apathy and diminished emotional expression. So yeah, those are just symptoms, but why psychosis? What happened? Well, there are a lot of theories, but one of the most accepted one is the dopamine hypothesis, which suggests that excess dopamine activity in certain brain areas is related to psychotic symptoms. The positive ones that include hallucinations, delusions, and the negative ones that might be apathy or motivation of life. This theory suggests that there are an overactivity of dopamine neurotransmission in certain part of the brain that cause hallucinations and the positive ones. In the mesolimbic pathway, the components connect the ventral tegment area in the midbrain to the nucleus accumbens in the limbic system. These functions plays a significant role for a regulation of emotions, reward processing, and motivation. This what I was talking before. The association with psychosis, it means like there are an hyperactivity in this pathway is believed to lead to the positive symptoms of psychosis, such as hallucinations or delusions. While in the other hand, the mesocortical pathway, that means the one that connects BTA to the prefrontal cortex, this part, these functions, I think we all know, but if you don't know, involve in cognitive functions and things like decision makings, attention, and working memory. This is important so we can understand better our protagonist. So the association with this mesocorticoidal pathway, it's with psychosis, is that there is a hypoactivity. That means that there is a reduced dopamine activity in this pathway that it's linked to negative symptoms such as apathy and reduced emotional expression and cognitive deficit in psychosis. In this part, we are going to talk about why psychosis. Well, again, there aren't 100% true answers about this, but Psychosis can result from a combination of genetics and environment factors. First degree related with schizophrenia significantly increase the risk. Moreover, traumatic experience in childhood, chronic stress, well, here is an important part. Traumatic experience in childhood or chronic stress. This, I don't want to spoil it. If you didn't play this game, you should stop this video and play it and then go back. Because it's amazing. But you are going to understand what I'm talking about, the chronic stress and traumatic experience in childhood. All of this is going to make us understand better our protagonist. So let's apply a little bit of psychological theories. For example, Melanie Klein, she introduces the concept of paranoid-schizoid position, where the individuals split their internal object into good and bad to manage anxiety. This is a typical thing that also we can see in cluster B of DSM-5, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, that switch to think that a certain internal object, that means in the Melanie Klein's theory, it's not an object, it's not a ball, it's not a game, it's the representations can be of a person, representation of a certain role or person. So if, for example, in our protagonist, when she reached the house, we can see that monster, that it's her mother. So we can guess that the protagonist perceives her mother as a monstrous figure that might be internalized as a bad object. This can switch. The mother, it's not well represented. It's not accurate. Well, the representations are never 100% accurate because they're representations of our brains, of the things that we can see. But in here, the representations are more far away from the reality. On the other hand, we have Journal Winnicott. He talks about this idea of false self, that it's a mask that the individuals adopts to protect the vulnerable true self. This happens a lot when a baby, a child, can't recognize their own feelings. We need to develop our true self. We need a person that is reflecting our emotions and feelings, because we don't understand our body when we are babies. We need someone that teaches to represent everything. So also ourselves. So if we don't have this mirror, we can't develop ourselves. We don't know who we are. So these childs in general tend to create another personality, another self to protect themselves. Why? Because maybe if they behave that they are going to behave normally, for example, if they cry because something happened and it keeps continue that the father, the mother, the protective role scream at him, her, when it's a child, it's going to internalize that crying it's bad. If I cry, they are going to scream at me. So I don't have to cry. That it's bad. And finally, this is hard. I'm not going to talk about the whole theory about Jacques Lacan, but he discussed the foreclosure of the name of the father. Yeah, where the absence of the fundamental signifier in the unconscious leads to psychosis. What? Yeah, this is a long theory about the symbolic and the languages. This can be seen in the protagonist's disorganized language and distortion perceptions due to a lack of a stable symbolic structure. This means that we all have some symbolic structure that we symbolize the world around us. But we have some north to follow. In psychosis, that north, that it's the name of the father in the theory of Jacques Lacan, it's foreclosure. There is something that's so inside that isn't there anymore. There is a meaning that isn't there anymore. There isn't a north. So that's can be a reason about the motivation of the patients with psychosis. At the beginning of the game, we can see how hard it's for her to go and buy that bag of milk. In the beginning, she tries, she practices saying, "Please, I want a bag of milk." It's hard for her even say those words because facing another person it's hard. She doesn't even have a representation of the other person she's talking. She's scared about this strange figure that appears. This is when we can see the hallucinations and visual distortions because the protagonist perceives the world in altered ways, such as faceless people and disturbed environments. Also, we can see that her dialogue is fragmented and often incoherent. She switches topics, you can't understand who she is talking with herself, with a person, and she also have these rituals. She repeats phrases and actions seeking comfort in familiarity. This is something that helps to relieve anxiety. And our role as a player in this particular game, it's unclear whether we are internal voice, we are an imaginary figure, or even an auditory hallucination. This could be interpreted as a manifestation of the defragmentation self in psychosis. We are part of her, or maybe not. And let's talk a little bit more about the mother. The protagonist's mother is a constant oppressive presence. Although she doesn't physically appear in the first game, her presence is palpable. She even say this to the cashier. First, we can see that the rules of society are hard for her because it's obvious that the cashier doesn't care about what is she saying and the other person doesn't have the full context. This is super graphic again because she's not only showing us that she's scared of her mother, she's showing us that she can't understand what the other figure person knows. For her, all the persons know everything. So this is another symptom that can appear in psychosis. For example, that the other persons can read our thoughts. And in this case, yeah, she's saying, "Please give me that bag of milk because my mom is going to kick me out of the window." That is something that can be strange for the cashier. And she doesn't look like she was making a joke about it. In the first game, she needs to buy this bag of milk, and this whole task, it's an odyssey. She is really trying to do it well this time. She had her mother internalized as this bad object that we were talking about. And it's a sort of persecutory feelings and fear. She had her mother every time. And the cool thing about this game is that have different endings. Each of these different endings help us understand we can understand better our protagonist. So in the first game, the first ending can be a positive ending. She managed to buy the milk and return home. While still internally struggling, there is a sense of accomplishment. While the other ending is the negative ending. she cannot handle the situation and the game ends abruptly, reflecting her mental collapse. There's different choices that we can make with her, and she said different things to us. What we can understand, at least what I can understand watching all the dialogues, it's that her dad killed himself. There is a part that she is talking about how her dad looks like the last time she saw him. This is a really traumatic thing that she can't represent. She has too much to deal with, to handle with, emotionally thinking, cognitive thinking of imagine having all this stress, all the situations, and you have to represent all by yourself. So this is hard for her. So she do it as she can. She doesn't. She never say my dad killed himself. She can't even watch the past. The past is something that it's all distorted, it unblurred. While in the sequel, we can see 3 endings. I'm telling you that this game is worth to be played, so play by yourself. It has a lot of dialogue. So in the sequel we have the reconciliation ending. She comforts some of her traumas and managed to fall asleep. Indicates slight progress in her healing. Despair ending. She spirals into dark thoughts with anguish prevailing. Or the secret ending. By making a specific choice and exploring certain dialogues, we uncover more about her past and her relationship with her mother, delving into the roots of her trauma. So in this sequel, we discover that the protagonist suffered emotional and possibly physical abuse from her mother, so from her dad. This abusive involvement, constant criticism, and a lack of affection and essential emotional support. It's really hard for her. The protagonist recalls moments of feeling completely isolated and fearful in her own home. These memories appear as flashbacks and hallucinations represented in the game with distortions images. For instance, there might be a scene where her mother silhouette transforms into a menacing figure, symbolizes the terror that she inflicted. Well, I have a tattoo of the mother because for me it was a game that made me feel a lot of empathy for her because I understand that feeling of being locked down in your own home. And then help us to understand why the protagonist sees her mother as a monster. It's not an irrational perception, but a representation of unresolved traumas that continue to haunt her. Her psychosis is partially a response to those traumatic events, a way for her mind to shield itself from the bearable pain. Again, applying Melanie Klein theory, this can be interpreted as inability to integrate the good and bad aspects of a mother, remaining stuck in the paranoid psychosis position. So the protagonist cannot perceive her mother as a complex figure with both positive and negative qualities, seeing her only the threatening part and helpful. Furthermore, Donald Winnicott's concept of false selves add another layer of understanding. Due to a hostile environment and lack of support, the protagonist might have developed a false self to survive, hiding her true self. The secret ending also shows how these traumas have affected her ability to trust for any form of relationships. Her isolation is not just social but also emotional. The presence of the player as an internal voice or imaginary figure or even her therapist could be interpreted as a defense mechanism if we think that we are part of her. A way to fill the void. left by the essence of a healthy relationship in her life. She even tells us a horrible situation about an internet friend that she had. That was the only relationship she ever had. By exploring her past in the secret ending, we can empathize even more with her. We are not merely observing with someone with a mental illness, but a person who has suffered deeply and whose this pain has led her to current state. Well, this video is being so long, but I would like to talk about the five endings that have milk outside of the milk bag. But because this video is going to be so long, I think I'm going to do another video talking about specifically to the endings. I'm not saying that we have to feel empathy just because of the tragic story behind, because the current moment it's also hard. But she presents us this life as a normal life for her, a normal life with no way out. She only has herself and the other self that are us. Well, in this section, I want to talk about the aesthetic of this game because the, the game minimalist aesthetics gains even more significance when considered the secret ending. The simple graphics and abstract images allows the emotional and psychological aspects of the story to take center stage. Visual distortions reflect the protagonist's emotional instability and fragmented reality. For example, during flashbacks in the secret ending, colors might become darker. Every time we into her mind, the distortions are even more chaotic. The noises are faster. This shows the anxiety of being on her own mind. The secret ending adds an intense emotional layer to players' experience. Many have shared how this conclusion deeply impacted them, prompting reflections on trauma, abuse, and resilience. By exposing the roots of the protagonist's suffer, the game not only shows the consequences of psychosis but also the underlying causes. This is an honest and raw portrayal of trauma, can serve as a form of awareness and promote empathy towards those who have gone through similar situations. It reinforced the potential of video games as a tool to explore and process complex emotions. As we were talking in the first game, the first scene occurs when she reaches the store. She becomes overwhelmed by the fluorescent lights and the presence of all the customers. Her thoughts become increasingly chaotic. Questions wherever she's acting normal. She had to pretend, as we were talking about the false self, she is really worried about being a normal person. This scene illustrates her social anxiety and sensory overload. And in the sequel, we spend time in her apartment, which serves as a physical representation of her mind. The cluttered of space nature of the room can reflect her emotional state. We can see that everything is all over the floor. She doesn't make tidy her room. This it's a way of showing us her disorganization inside of her and outside of her. Memories. Some of them are comforting, other traumatics. She really don't want to dig down there because she has pain while she remembers. Impactfully seen is when she tries to fall asleep. She expresses fear of her nightmares. This fear keeps her awake. And as we talked before, flashbacks shows us instances of emotional neglect and abuse from her mother. For example, there is a scene where her mother dismisses her feelings, saying things like "you are overreacting" or "stop being so sensitive," which invalidates her emotion and contributes to her isolation. She really don't know who is she. This revelation helps us to understand the root of her trauma. The lack of nurturing environment aligns with attachment theory, where early relationships with caregivers shapes one's mental health. John Bowlby emphasized that insecure attachments can lead to difficulties in emotional regulations and interpersonal relationships. This also happened in, for example, borderline personality disorder. Lacking support in her real life, she might create an imagined companion to fulfill her need of connection, a concept that can interpret through object relation theory in psychosis. So, this is a quote. The internalization of relationship with significant others forms the foundations of the self, as proposed of Melanie Klein in 1946. Protagonist's internal world is populated by fragmented and persecutory objects, reflecting her unresolved conflicts. In conclusion, let's talk about us as a players. Fleming in 2017 said, and quote, Serious game can provide a safe and engaging way for individuals to explore mental health issues, potentially reducing stigma and encourage health-seeking behaviors. Strongly agree with Fleming because a lot of players report a strong emotional impact after playing these games. We gain empathy for her struggles. Some players even shared that the games helped them to process their own feelings of anxiety. By seeing aspects of themselves in the protagonist, they felt less alone and more encouraged to seek help or connect with others. Because when we see another person struggling, it's not the same as us. Sometimes we have a self that it's really insecure. We don't want to take care of ourselves because maybe we hate ourselves. But when we see another person that is struggling, we can feel empathy for them, so we can reflect it back. So I hope this analysis has offered you new insight into these remarkable games. If you haven't played them yet, I highly recommend you. Remember also, if you or someone you know is facing similar challenges, it's important to seek professional help. You're not alone, and there's a lot of support available. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and please share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content like this. Take care. Mwah. Goodbye.
Milk inside a bag of milk.